just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
From WBRN Radio. And riding on the 20th of March, the first day of spring. It came early this year, earlier than in previous times, both astronomically and, I don't have my notes here, but meteorologically. Get it right here. So we are here, and you are there, and this is Boston Red and the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth in the era of the COVID-19 virus that has changed the nation, the mindset of the nation. We have very large states, the most populous state, California, 40 million plus people, that they are under a shuttered or quarantine, whatever you want to call it, that they stay home. For those in California that have a home to stay in, they are there. That's also in New York, and other states are added as we move along. There has been a bill passed out of the Congress and signed by DJ Trump, affect unemployment relief to people, sick leave, etc. But it's only temporary for 14 days, basically speaking, for those industries. But what is happening in California, you're having hundreds of thousands of workers that are laid off or their hours are reduced across numbers of industries. Of course, in California, the entertainment industry is hit. Movie production is shuttered down in Southern California primarily. So we are having more and more people every day as this COVID virus 19 spreads across the continental 50 states that make up the United States, and also across the world. The biggest problem in the states is that we don't have a centralized health authority or centralized government with the authority. Yes, there is a federal government, but as DJ Trump said the other day, they were not clerks. Thus, the governors and states have to go out and get ventilators, masks, and various other paraphernalia on their own. Now, in most modern nation states, we would not have that type of flummery. We would have a centralized government that would take command and control and move forward. And also in many countries, governments are actually placing under authorization, or they are nationalizing some industries to move forward. In the U.S., they do have an act, but they're waiting voluntarily on these corporations to transform some of their industrial makeup into producing items that can be used in this pandemic. However, though, the major crisis is it's in ideology. There's no doubt about that. The old theme, science is science, and every time you hear the word COVID-19, that is a place for science. Now, the Trump administration is not working on science. They are on other things. If you recall, the backbone of his followers, that's DJ Trump, are conspiracy theorists and people that do not believe in such things as vaccinations, etc. In fact, Trump himself promoted those types of very, very dodgy theories there at one time. And of course, the birther movement, he was known for that. But you have this disconnect. You cannot have people or an administration that is anti-science try to use science. It's utterly impossible. That's like a scientist without a test tube or a microscope. So you have it even at these so-called elaborate briefings that Trump has, all these jokers that come in there, that it is virtually not based on science. The CDC in the U.S. Did not take the tests that were handed out by the World Health Organization. Incidentally, for the listeners, if you want to really know about what's going on, go to WHO, the World Health Organization sites. There's one also called the COVID Virus Handbook for those that want to get more technically engaged. There are many sources to go to. And in the coming days and weeks, we will be reporting the best information that we have. On the program today, we'll be talking about the political implications, and also this week on our macroeconomics program, Numbers Man will come up to date with the latest financial machinations. The Fed has cut the interest rate to near 0.25 or 25 basis points. They've also opened up various things, a market window, some swaps, other things the Fed has been able to do to try to get money into the economy. They put over $500 billion into the economy. And the current bill that is before the Senate. Now, this is, I'm not skipping around here, this is the floor plan that Trump laid out. They decided that the administration and the Republicans in the Senate under McConnell would hammer out a program. The problem is, in this type of situation, all things budgetary, they usually begin in the House of Representatives, and they have to address the concerns of the House. McConnell was planning to get this out in one day, just simply does not happen. So now they are forced to negotiate. The problem is, as normal, this is an abnormal time, and you have the old cookie cutter. We'll go back to 2008 and the Depression, some call the Great Recession. It doesn't really matter what it was called, but at that time they had something called TARP, and then they had no interest loans basically to corporations that the corporations paid back, but nonetheless they got the money. Bernie Sanders talks about this, but that doesn't work. It's to crooks on Wall Street and various other crooks. They were bailed out. There was a big anxiety about it, commotion, I guess you'd call it, and that brought in the Tea Party types, but that is what we political consultants call a flippable. In actuality, they were not. What they were protesting against was big government, anti-government. Now, you can understand this. If you link up with the conspiracy theorists, a very individualized situation, and that is how their view of capitalism, and that view has been just literally crushed. And one of the problems, of course, the Fed is set up to deal with the economy in normal times and even sometimes in abnormal times from a macro standpoint. But what is happening here, we'll get more. You see a lot of micro-type economic things are coming in here that affect individuals. That is to what they call nowadays the behavioral economists that they're dealing with. We'll have some of that on numbers, man. We have to kind of move around here so real people understand what's going on. But the basic situation is to provide some funds for daily living. And that's where people would get sick leave. That is if they are caring for someone or that they have the COVID-19 virus are actually victims of it, etc. And the other part is unemployment. Now, that is another problem. It's a federal program, but administered by the states. And in some states, far less benefits. Those benefits were enacted towards getting people to work. They call it able-bodied, but it doesn't necessarily have to be able-bodied people, anyone else. Therefore, they decided, well, we make the benefits as paltry as possible, the less people would want to draw it, and also have very limited times on it. Now, that is a big problem in capitalist systems, modern capitalist systems, called a social net. The more you cut the social net, when you get into times like this, that you have a pandemic on top of a downturn, and that is one of the things you have to make clear to people. This downturn has been coming along for a very long time. Manufacturing in the U.S. has been in a recession for a number of months, and the numbers themselves are going that direction, but yet many of the people in the economic community, economists, university economists, business economists, etc., have not characterized it as a recession. Now, recessions are very different. They have normally that is called 2 consecutive quarters. It could be 3 consecutive quarters. And that is a recession. Now, again, that translates into downturns. You can have a downturn that is, say, less severe than the one in 2008. Or the one, before 2008. Then you tell the recession, then you can say that is a very severe downturn, which is a depression. Now, that is distinguished between the 1929, which was called the Great Depression. Well, the problem there is the definition of Great Depression had about 25% officially unemployed. Is much more. Soup lines coast to coast from Los Angeles to New York. And DJ Trump in one of his little news conferences said, well, if something isn't done, the unemployment rate in the U.S. could be 20%. Well, 20%, you'd definitely be in a depression. And one thing to remember, in 1929, the way of accessing statistics was totally different. There were not computers at that time. Now everything is computerized. There's more instant information. There is the internet, that people now that are forced to be in their homes or wherever are getting almost up to the minute information, whether it be on Facebook, Twitter, or etc. And of course, people also listening to internet radio. You go to iHeart, you can find us. Or go to Google Podcasts. Go to Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, etc. You will find the Boston Red Network will be there, and the various networks also in Italy. So never fear, Italy and Spain and across Europe, you can also find us there. Now, back to the U.S. situation as supposed figure, the actual cash they were going to give out to each person. Now they have an income means test. I think it's up to $70,000, $80,000. A person will get maybe $1,200 in 2 payments. That is not precise now, and then a $500 dependent. So I suppose about $2,500. Problem is, and Bernie points this out, and we'll have more on this incidentally, how long the pandemic is still around and people are sheltered. Many businesses are closed. And what this means out in the Bay Area in California, people that can work from their offices are getting regular paychecks. They can work from their homes. They are able to do it. But businesses that have to deal with people direct, restaurants, etc., are closed or shuttered, or what do you want to call it. They do takeaway or carry out, and that is it. Less workers involved there. What about the gig economy that's become the gig economy has become the gig economy? Get it right in a second here. That is a very important question. The Uber driver. Does the Uber driver qualify for unemployment benefits? That's going to have to be fixed. If they're classified self-employed, the self-employed should be under unemployment insurance as everyone else is. And that's one of the big situations. The mortgage people have announced that basically for the next 12 months, you can call up whomever you're dealing with, and your payments will either be prorated, depending on what you can pay, or they will not show up on your record, so you get a 12-month grace period. They should make that automatic. You should not have to call the mortgage facilitator, period. Now, the other big problem is people that rent. That has to be addressed in this bill. There has to be monies to help people pay the rent. In some places, there is talk of moratorium on evictions, at least say for 30 days, but that doesn't solve the problem. This problem is going to be around much more than 30 days, period. And in many places, even the $1,200 in 2 payments, if your rent is $1,200, what would you do? And these places that are shut down, if say they are only shut down for 7 days or 14 days, it will take time for those businesses to get up and running again. And also with other people that are out of a job are not going to go to those businesses. They'll have to still depend on primarily the middle class. So those are some functional problems that we have. Let me go a little bit to elections here. As people now know, the Arizona primary is over. The primary, let's see, where was the primary? It's been so long. It was Arizona, and the other, let's see, I can look at it here. I got it right before I go with my teleprompter. Florida, I always forget about them. Illinois, didn't mean anything. Joe Biden won those primaries. But Louisiana and Georgia and Ohio postponed their primaries. In fact, now Louisiana is moving from April to, I believe, June. So that whole voting situation is in the air. Will they vote by mail or not? Will the pandemic clear out of the U.S. enough to have election day in November? Who knows? So in other words, voting by mail is coming in, and how will that affect everything? We have in this broadcast our friends from the University of Virginia, Charlottesville. We always remember Heather Heyer. And the guest columnist here is Professor Amowitz of Emory University. Yeah, let's go to his situation. I read his book. We'll talk a little more about that. Anyway, this is the coronavirus, COVID-19 virus. Recession could doom Trump's re-election chances. This is by Professor Amowitz. And we'll add some commentary as we go along here. The key points here: the coronavirus, public health crisis likely will lead to an economic downturn of unknown length and severity. Historically, second quarter GDP growth in the election year is an important variable in predicting how an incumbent president will perform in the fall. A recession could seriously damage DJ Trump's re-election's chances. However, we are truly in uncharted territory, and it's unclear how the public will respond electorally to an economic downturn forced by a pandemic. The recession threat to a second Trump term. The coronavirus pandemic has upended almost every aspect of American life. over the past few weeks, and the 2020 presidential election is no exception. We have already seen candidates forced to cancel rallies and hold debates with no audience present, shift their campaign staffs to working online. But the biggest impact of the crisis of the 2020 election is likely to through its effects on the U.S. economy, with major sectors of the economy grinding to a near standstill due to the pandemic. Many economic forecasts are now forecasting that the U.S. will experience a major downturn in economic growth in the current quarter, no doubt about that. It could also continue in at least the next 2 quarters. That would be March, incidentally, ends Q1, that's Q2 and Q3. Some forecasters are predicting a major recession, with the economy shrinking by 5% or more in Q2, the second quarter. That's significant because in many election forecasting models, including my own, as Professor Amowitz in his Time for Change model, economic growth in the second quarter is a key predictor of the election. If it is the key predictor of the election, DJ Trump can close up his campaign headquarters. Now, models, hold on a second here, and the performance of the economy in the second quarter seems to shape opinions on the economy in the fall. So it's possible that even if the economy recovers later in the year, highly unlikely, most electorally perceptions will needlessly be formed in the spring and in the summer. Not necessarily. We'll talk more about this in a minute here. By the 2020 election, I modified my Time for Change model by focusing entirely on election with a running incumbent. That is because these elections are both incumbent and approval ratings in late June and growth rates in the economy in Q2 have much stronger effects than elections without a running incumbent. I've also modified the model to make the electoral vote rather than the popular vote the dependent variable, because it is the electoral vote. It is the electoral vote that decides the winner. I unveiled this version of the model. I unveiled last April. Table 2, we'll get to the coefficient here. Data compiled by the Offer Time for Change model does do an excellent job of predicting the outcomes of these elections with an adjustment of R2 to 0.29. This is a measurement of how accurate the model predicts what happens from 0.0 to 1 scale. The model predicts correctly the winner of all 11 elections. The average prediction error is 27 electoral votes. That is as close as you get. According to the results in the table, approval rating minus disapproval rating can be expected to yield approximately 2.5 electoral votes. Likewise, 1 point increase in real GDP in the second quarter could be expected to yield approximately 20 electoral votes. Finally, a first-term incumbent who did not take over from a member of his own party, like DJ Trump, could expect to gain additional 114 electoral votes compared with a second or later-term incumbent, a substantial advantage. Conditional forecasts of the Trump electoral vote. President Trump's, depending on his net approval rating in late April and the growth rate of the U.S. economy during the second quarter, that's Q2, which will start April 1st, since then it's not an April Fool joke. It takes 270 electoral votes to win an election. That result indicates that despite the huge boost that Trump is predicted to receive as a first-term incumbent, an economic downturn in the second quarter combined with a net approval rating in negative territory could very likely doom Trump's chances of winning a second term. The only scenario here in which Trump could be a favorite to win a second term would be a modest economic growth compared with small improvement in the vicinity of a negative 10 for many months, according to the 538 average. The model suggests that a major recession would likely result in the Electoral College landslide for the Democratic challenger. Now, discussion based upon the results of presidential elections since World War II, running incumbents, a president with an upside-down approval rating and an economy in recession would have little chance of winning a second term. If Trump's net approval ratings remain where it is now or declines further, the recession is severe, with real GDP shrinking by 3 points or more in the second quarter. The real results would be a landslide there. And that is well, anyway, a few caveats in order here. Voters may not hold an incumbent president responsible for a recession brought on by unforeseen disasters like the coronavirus pandemic, although it may hold him responsible for the government's reaction to the pandemic, which is a story that is still being written. More, if our current era of deep partisan polarization, events like recessions may not have as great an impact on the incumbent's election fortunes as they did in the past. Well, Mike is in agreement that we've seen that Trump's approval ratings have remained stable, almost unwavering support from his fellow Republicans, equally unwavering opposition from the Democrats. On the other hand, polarization might also mean that incumbents, especially one who makes little effort to appeal to voters outside of his own party, might not receive the full benefits of incumbency, which depends on the ability of the incumbent to attract voters across party lines. The DJ Trump campaign is hoping to literally throw the magic bullet out there and say, look, I sent out $2,200 to you and I supported this. That is factually incorrect. He did not. He first came up with the second best there's a $100 billion bill there, and there was one before that. It was going to be a $2.8 million. It ended up being $8.5 billion. That was the first, and now we get to the second one. That's the unemployment, etc. Now, the first one was to cover costs of testing and cost of supplies. Finally, the fact of our forecasts are based on the 11 elections should make us cautious as interpreting these results, despite the impressive accuracy of the model. Overall, one of the best arguments in favor of the president winning a second term has been strong electoral performance for much of his term. The public health crisis seems very likely to depress that performance at least the next few months. This poses an electoral threat to the president, which the model demonstrates. This is Professor Ammerwood, Barclay professor, a political columnist there. This is a book we encourage you to read called The Great Alignment, Race, Party Transformation, and the Rise of Donald Trump. And that was released 2 years ago by the Yale University Press. Now, this is very, very important here. Now, I'm not sure about this one. This is by Louis Jacobs. I think we did this, the up-and-coming candidates from the wrong party and one-party states. Oh, well, no, I guess we haven't. One-party dominance extends to state elected officials. Up-and-coming candidates from the wrong party and one-party states like Mayor Petey don't have much practical chance for statewide advances. This is Louis Jacobson, another senior columnist here, for talented young political prospects who belong to a minor party in a state dominated by one party. The path to statewide advancement is rocky. In 34 or 50 states, a single party controls all the statewide elective offices. Only 4 states have relatively mixed balances of Republicans and Democrats. By historical standards, Mayor Pete had a thin record in public office because before he embarked on a presidential run. Buttigieg had served 2 terms as the mayor of South Bend. That's a small city, and made one run for statewide office treasurer, and it ended up, of course, in failure. But Buttigieg was like many politicians with potential doomed to live in a state trending away from their party. In Buttigieg's case, the Democrats' chance of winning statewide office in Indiana seems and likely was smaller than his chance of being elected president. Though he eventually gave in and endorsed Joe Biden, Buttigieg ended up a top-tier candidate, nearly winning Iowa and finishing respectably in New Hampshire, and that's where he disappeared from the scheme of things. Strong showing than he might have had if he had ran for, say, Secretary of State, state auditor, or even dog catcher back in Indiana. Certainly is the reality in today's highly polarized electorate, but if you're a Democrat serving in a local office in a red state, or Republican serving in a similar post in a blue state, your chance of winning becomes vanishing small, thanks to highly polarized partisan preferences for filing really to anonymous row offices, a term we haven't seen in a long time. To understand this phenomena fully, we must look at the partisan breakdown of major statewide offices in all 50 states. We focus on these positions, including everything from governor, state's attorney, secretary of state, auditor, even secretary of agriculture. For this article, we've analyzed election positions for which candidates run with a partisan affiliate. The following table breaks down the results by states. Statewide Republican suites 18. Another table, statewide Democrat sweep, 16, Republican suites except for Democratic government 4, and so forth and so on. The chart shows Republicans swept every statewide office in 18 states, while the Democrats swept office in 16 states. In 4 other states, the Democrats beat the odds by winning the governorship, Kansas would be an example. Even as they lost every statewide office, the Republicans managed this trick in another 3 states. The governorship, by virtue of the prominence in the media coverage, is a likely position to be elevated by the candidate's merit, rather than by partisan preference. 3 states, the Democrat lucked out by winning one non-gubernatorial seat amidst a Republican sweep, while the Republicans managed the same feat in 2 states. That leaves 4 states in which state minority party managed to win at least 2 statewide offices. One of these states is Arizona, is undergoing a partisan transition from red to purple, the home of Barry Goldwater. Another state, North Carolina, fierce battle there. A 3rd state, Iowa, historically a swing state, much less so today. No, it's a Republican state now. For an ambitious politician who has a proven record of winning office in small geographic areas, say in running for mayor, county executive, this state of play is ominous. Consider Rhode Island, where Republicans have not won a statewide election since 2006, where just 12% of the electorate identify as Republicans, and where the GOP holds only 14 of 113 General Assembly seats. In Rhode Island, Democrats won uncontested races in every district won by D.J. Trump, Rhode Island College, Val Indus. Inability to field candidates in a favorable district speaks to dysfunction of a state's GOP party. That can say the same in other states that has happened. The flip side of it is Tennessee, the home of a former Vice President Albert Gore, and his father was also senator there. Where far I can tell, the Democratic Party has been eviscerated. That's from a political scientist named Anthony Naunis. This is obvious when the only candidate they could find for the U.S. Senate race was Phil Breslin. I could think of no other Democrat in the entire state who has any name recognition at all. In Illinois, the home state of Barack Obama, venerable Republican Party has been seen as in wane. Bedrock in the suburbs of Chicago has turned to a shade of purple, even blue. Recent election, the GOP decline in fortune in Illinois has produced a smaller and much smaller fiscal and socially a conservative Republican Party. That's according to Kent Redfield. He's a professor at the University of Illinois Springfield. While fiscal conservatives like business type Bruce Riemer was able to win the Illinois governorship, that was in 2014. That was a good year for the GOP. He has no hope of surviving as a much stronger Democratic midterm later, 4 years later. Yeah, that was unfortunate there. That was because of dysfunction of the Democratic Party in the city of Chicago. For Republicans to win statewide in Illinois, they need to be the right kind of Republican. Current direction of the Republican Party makes it difficult for those candidates to win in a primary. That's from Mr. Professor Redfield. John Griggs, an Indiana Democrat who ran on success for governor in 2012 and 2016, said he faced a severe challenge in his bid. First, the candidate must overcome a perception that the statewide office is unwinnable, regardless of the candidate's own personal experience, electoral record, and fundraising prowess. People too often make an assumption that a race is about a race before it's run. No doubt about it. Second factor is that the media outlets can sometimes can be somewhat dismissive, but that's the same thing they tried to do with Bernie Sanders because it wants to follow the perceived winner. A candidate can propose details, well thought out policies, and be ahead of the curve, but often there is no coverage. Greg said the demise of local news, this is very important here, corporate media is out there, and this is also very important in the 2020 election or the re-election of D.J. Trump. Many voters turn to national cable outlets, and they tend to be much more conservative than local media in many places, such as CNN, Fox News, and the ABC, NBC, and all those characters. And they've also lost viewership, which focus on fight between national parties that increase polarization. Candidates are consumed by the perception about national issues and people, regardless of whether they share their views or not. He said Tip O'Neill's maxim saying that all politics is local is no longer true. Now all politics is national. Greg has a company. We came across skilled politicians in both parties whose aspirations have been stymied because of their label. In Hawaii, a Republican there by the name of Tupola, the young former minority leader, heavy Democratic State House, was an appealing candidate, said veteran journalist Nancy Cook. Tupola won the GOP gubernatorial nomination with more than half of the votes in the freeway contest, but she was defeated just by a third of the vote against incumbent Democrat Dave I-G-E. Okay. Such as a wide loss combined with Republican weak bench, they don't have much of a bench out there, suggested the improbability of a major renaissance in the near future. In Mississippi, Jim Hood, remember him, conservative Democrat, initially a man that literally brought charges against the Ku Klux Klan, seemed to have a reasonable shot at beating a divisive Republican candidate, Tate Reeves, and that was in 2019. He ended up losing by 5 points. Not bad in Mississippi. If Hood could could I doubt that the Democrats could not win a state office in Mississippi anytime soon. That is Tagula College political science Steve Rossman. Hood had been the only Democrat to hold a statewide office in recent years, so he served 4 terms as Attorney General. So Democrats are shut out there. Arguably the country's stark example of partisan shutout is California. The Republican Party that once produced Reagan, George Demontichuk, and Pete Wilson now ranks third behind the Democrats in non-aligned voters. The last time a non-incumbent Republican was elected, California's 8th statewide constitutional office in 2006. Thanks to State Top's 2 primary system, the California GOP is no longer even guaranteed to get a candidate into the general election. California Republican Party has no chance of winning statewide candidates But they have a jungle primary out there. Incidentally, Steve Posner was a prototype qualified candidate who lost due to his party affiliation. That's Godwin, a professor of public Verney University. He was the first elected as a Republican to position state insurance commissioner. Served one term, that was between 2007 and 2008. He ran for the same office in 2018, at that time as an independent. He was a top vote getter in the primary and received a large number of newspaper endorsements. But to no avail, he lost the Democratic state senator in the general election. Democrats' tide in California has been so strong when Republican Paul Chabot lost the congressional race in 2014 to 2016. He and his wife moved to Texas, started a relocation business for blue state conservatives who wanted to move to politically friendly territory. That's something we're starting to see nowadays also. California, the CBC. Now I realize most Republicans have given up on from Gerald Benjamin, as he's at Stony. Their political science points to weak showing in the 2018 New York by somebody by the name of Marcus, very smart and talented county executive. Como. We used to say that voters are smart about accountability. They pick Republican controllers. When we have Democratic governors and vice versa, said that no longer there. Louis Jacobson, he's a senior columnist here, and he's a senior correspondent for the fact-check site, excuse me, PolitiFact, and was a senior author in the 2020 edition of the Almanac of American Politics. We encourage you to read that particular book. Nonetheless, this will end Friday Jobber on the 20th, 2020. This is Boston Red and the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. A note, we'll be turning out episodes as we move along here. A little bit different now because of COVID-19. We have been pretty well. We still have a heart procedure to do, but with COVID-19 and the various operating rooms, etc., busy, although ours is not an elective procedure, but we have to, as I said, go along with the program. We were planning to have it at Mass General or the Mayo Clinic. I'm not sure where we'll have it now. But nonetheless, we will get that done, and we'll see you, hopefully more regularly than we have been seeing you. We'll see you on the week that was. And incidentally, we have last week's Friday Job. I guess I hadn't got it uploaded. And I believe we had the Monday morning quarterback from last Monday morning. We'll get those up historically. We'll also start posting some of our episodes doing on Numbers Man during the Depression of 2008, 2009. 2009 during the administration of Barack Obama. The old days. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk soon. Good day.